Hegseth is hiding something here, and he's known to be a liar.
This is deemed to have been war crimes, which by all accounts right now, Pete Hegseth did say kill them all, even after there were 2 survivors.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, what do we have here? I just opened the New York Times, and it turns out that that Washington Post article claiming that Pete Hegseth ordered directly a second strike on that drug smuggling boat in the Caribbean was lying. Yes, lying. Shocking, I know. The Washington Post never lies. But honestly, this is par for the course with Democrats. We know what they're doing. We've seen this before. They love taking a situation, muddying the details, and hoping the average person doesn't have time to dissect what actually happened. That's really their entire playbook. But here's the narrative they've been pushing nonstop. If you haven't been following this story, I'm going to give you the Clip Notes version of it, the short version. So Pete Hegseth apparently directly ordered a second strike on a drug boat in the Caribbean. Okay. This boat wasn't destroyed after the first hit. This is the controversial part, though. So there were reportedly 2 survivors clinging to the wreckage. Therefore, boom, war crime. Turn on any Democrat on TV right now. I mean, The View, Mark Kelly, Dollar Store Obama, Hakeem Jeffries, and they're all saying the exact same phrasing. War crime, war crime, war crime. They are laser focused on branding this as some monstrous act by both Hegseth and the Trump administration. Now, first of all, no, I don't believe this is a war crime, not even remotely. And to be honest, even if Pete Hegseth had personally ordered the second strike, we're talking about drug smuggling operations. These are not innocent fishing boats. And if other smugglers see that this is happening, they might think twice. And really, that's exactly the point. But let's get into what actually happened, because Democrats are blending the fact and fiction together like they always do. So they have the facts and then they have the fiction. And they like to mix these together so that it divides us. And, you know, the best lie has just a little hint of truth in it as well. But here are the real details. Pete Hegseth did give the initial orders, kill them all, meaning destroy the boats completely. He issued that order to Admiral Bradley. Admiral Bradley is the one who directed the actual missile strikes. He, not Hegseth, made the call on strike sequencing. Okay. Democrats are now twisting this into, well, since Hegseth gave the broad order and Bradley executed the second strike, therefore Hegseth is responsible for everything that happened. That's their entire argument, basically. And some of them are just outright lying and saying that Pete Hegseth did directly order the second strike. So you have kind of a spectrum. Some of them are trying to twist it into, yeah, well, because he gave the broad order, therefore it's his fault. Some of them are just saying he actually did give the second order. So they're trying to pin the second strike directly on him in a roundabout way. And this is for 2 obvious reasons. Pete Hegseth, this is number 1, is going after Mark Kelly for his role in the Seditious Six. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, this one's obvious. The midterms are coming up, and Democrats want to take down anyone with name recognition in the Trump administration. Yes, anyone they want to tarnish them because they want to get Trump. They want to lower Trump's credibility in the eyes of the public. But guess what? This entire narrative that they've been building over the past several days just collapsed, and this is unbelievable. The correction came from an unlikely source. The New York Times, yes, even the New York Times is contradicting the Washington Post version of events. They essentially are clarifying the murky, conveniently ambiguous language the Washington Post used, language that was almost certainly intentional. But the Washington Post blurred the lines, and the New York Times just unblurred them, and the Democrats' narrative has fallen apart. But this is the New York Times article, and keep in mind that the Washington Post article essentially accused Pete Hegseth of directly ordering the second strikes. Like I said, I don't have any problem with that, but this is pretty much key to the narrative of the Democrats and why they are accusing the Trump administration and Pete Hegseth of committing war crimes. But this is where the New York Times contradicted the Washington Post. It says here, according to 5 U.S. officials who spoke separately on the condition of anonymity to discuss a sensitive matter that is under investigation, Mr. Hegseth, ahead of the September 2nd attack, ordered a strike that would kill the people on the boat and destroy the vessel and its purported cargo of drugs. So this is the broader order. This is, I would assume, the order that he gave to Admiral Bradley. But let's continue. But each official said Mr. Hegseth's directive did not specifically address what should happen if a first missile turned out not to fully accomplish all of those things. And the official said his order was not a response to surveillance footage showing that at least 2 people on the boat survived the first blast. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The Washington Post, once again, proving itself to be a truly terrible fake news media outlet. No surprise there, but before we move on, I want to show you a photo of Admiral Bradley right here, this hero who actually carried out these strikes and took out these drug smugglers. I'm a huge fan of this guy. Good on him. Keep doing exactly what you're doing. We support you 100%. We want you to destroy the drug smugglers who are trying to poison our society, rip our culture, and ruin our children. Yes, we want more of this. And just because the Democrats are screaming war crimes doesn't make it a war crime. They're only doing this because they need a manufactured issue heading into the midterms and because they want to tear down Pete Hegseth for calling out Mark Kelly and the Seditious Six. This is not a real scandal. It's not even close. It's laughable that the Democrats are making this their big talking point, attacking members of the Trump administration for trying to stop drugs from entering the United States. Absolutely typical. But despite how overblown this whole situation is, it does look like, because this narrative has been blasted out across virtually every major news outlet and repeated by the very confident and self-assured host on The View, it looks like we might actually end up seeing congressional hearings where Pete Hegseth is questioned about all of this. And I wanted to play this clip because it's such a clear example of the hosts on The View speaking as if they fully understand the situation when it's obvious they're just repeating what they read in the Washington Post article, reading into it, adding stuff. They took the claims in that piece and stated them as absolute fact, that Pete Hegseth ordered a second strike and that this automatically constitutes a war crime. And the bad part about The View, and you already know this, who does it go out to? Probably the most gullible audience in America, liberal women. Yeah. And what happens after they watch it? They react exactly as expected, outraged, convinced that Pete Hegseth committed war crimes and murdered survivors in the Caribbean without ever stopping to consider the actual context, including the fact that this was a drug smuggling boat. There's no interest in nuance. It's all political. It's all about creating a narrative and rallying a tribe. And that's what is exactly happening here. But take a listen.
I can't speak to the law of it. I don't know, I'm not a geopolitical expert, but in terms of the law of it, you're right, Sarah. That is why those Army vets explained, do not follow, you do not have to follow illegal orders. You know why? Because if this is deemed to have been war crimes, which by all accounts right now, there are 7 sources that said Pete Hegseth did say kill them all, even after there were 2 survivors, which you're supposed to do under international law. You are supposed to take those fighters as war criminals, prisoners of war, and you're supposed to give them refuge, and you're supposed to take care of them, and then you are supposed to put them into a court of law.
I love how she says she can't speak to the law of it because she's not a geopolitical expert, and then she speaks to the law of it and tries to explain to everybody what international law is. Guys, you can't make this up. I mean, it's just so perfect. But here is Chuck Schumer saying that we're going to be getting recordings of what supposedly happened during this entire situation. And he also says directly that Pete Hegseth is hiding something. He goes as far as even to call him a liar. So they're making some very direct claims here. And it's kind of a odd situation. We have the Washington Post saying that Pete Hegseth ordered the second strike. We have the New York Times saying that Pete Hegseth merely gave a broad directive. So even among the major outlets, the reporting is conflicting. And now we have Chuck Schumer stepping in and saying essentially, Pete Hegseth, he's hiding something. He's lying. And he's saying this is why we need hearings. So that's where this is heading. Conflicting reports, political pressure, and now the Senate gearing up to dig into the situation, I guess. But this is what Chuck Schumer had to say.
You called on Hegseth to release the full tapes of the attack. We heard earlier in the show Chairman Wicker saying that he is seeking those tapes as well. What sort of action are Democrats prepared to take to try to make this happen, to getting those tapes?
Well, we hope that we can bring before the committees, bipartisan, as you said, Senator Wicker has been very much involved here, and get the top military people to testify, and we hope that they will release the tapes. You know, Hegseth is hiding something here, and he's known to be a liar. He said that the Washington Post story had no validity, and today the White House directly contradicted him that it did. And if he has nothing to hide, if he said he did nothing wrong, if he said no laws were violated, release the tapes.
Now, this is where you can clearly see the Democrats' lies up close and firsthand. And like I said, this is what they like to do. They like to obfuscate. They like to twist things around because this literally never happened. He said that Pete Hegseth said the Washington Post article had no validity. Then he said the White House contradicted Pete Hegseth. No, that's not what happened at all. In fact, this is what Pete Hegseth said. He said, as usual, the fake news is delivering more fabricated, inflammatory, and derogatory reporting to discredit our incredible warriors fighting to protect the homeland. Then he defends the strikes, and then he talks about the Biden administration not being hard enough on these issues, and he talks about the current operations being lawful. That's literally the whole thing he said about the article. He called it fake news. He calls it fabricated, inflammatory. And what did it say in that article? It said that Pete Hegseth ordered a second strike. The White House contradicted the article, actually, saying that Pete Hegseth didn't. It was Admiral Bradley. And now you have Chuck Schumer going on the news saying that Pete Hegseth called the article a lie, and then the White House contradicting Pete Hegseth. You literally can't make this up. It's lies all the way down with these Democrats. But despite all of this garbage about war crimes being thrown out there, and despite the Democrats really pushing this narrative, going on the media, you know, they're literally pulling all the stops out for this. Pete Hegseth has the back of Admiral Bradley. He said this. He said, let's make one thing crystal clear. Admiral Mitch Bradley is an American hero, a true professional, and has my 100% of support. I stand by him and the combat decisions he has made on the September 2nd mission and all others since. America is fortunate to have such men protecting us. When this Department of War says we have the back of our warriors, we mean it. So that's what Pete Hegseth said about Admiral Bradley. He has his back. And what's really funny is ever since he's come out and said this, now he's being accused of throwing Admiral Bradley under the bus. It's like, guys, why even try? You can't win ever with Democrats because it's not about the truth. It's not about any of that. It's simply how can they twist and contort the facts to create some sort of win for their side. That's all it is. We know this, but it's still interesting to observe when it happens. It's still no less outrageous and frustrating. Okay. I mean, I still can't believe it when I see it happening. But what do you guys think? Let me know what you think about this whole situation. You know, the Democrats are gearing up for the midterms. They're testing out different narratives to see what sticks. And it does look like they're leaning into this war crimes narrative pretty heavily because, you know, they try to go after the Trump administration for what they're doing by getting out these illegals. But that's super popular. You know, the people like that. They can't use that as a wedge issue. So what are they trying now? Well, they're testing this one out. They're like, let's see how the American people like this war crime narrative, see if that works. So they're throwing that up against the wall, seeing if it's going to stick. And, you know, I don't think it's going to stick because, let's be honest, what American wants more drugs coming into our country? It's ridiculous. But what do you guys think? Let me know what you think of all this down below in the comments. Like and subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate it. But until then, I'll see you on the next one.